In the Amazon, the worst attacks are not always the fastest. Sometimes the real horror starts after the first contact, when a predator does not just strike and disappear, but locks itself into the body and turns one wound into a continuing problem. A puncture becomes a grip becomes panic, and panic becomes the moment the body starts losing ground. This episode is about the Amazon killers that do not just injure once. They hold, dig in, and keep hurting long after the first hit lands. The river does not announce what is about to happen. At the edge of an Amazon floodplain, the water appears almost motionless, a dark, reflective surface broken only by drifting leaf litter and the slow, circular ripples of insects touching down. The banks are soft with sediment, layered by seasons of rising and falling water, and threaded with exposed roots that form natural steps into the shallows. This is where animals come to drink, to cross, or to cool their bodies in the oppressive heat. It is also where control begins, long before anything visible takes place. Beneath that flat surface, a caiman is already positioned, not in motion, not searching, but waiting within a system it understands perfectly. A caiman does not rely on speed in the way a terrestrial predator does. Its body is built for stillness that holds potential energy rather than releasing it. The eyes and nostrils sit high on the skull, allowing the rest of the body to remain submerged, invisible against the tannin-dark water. Even at close range, the animal is difficult to detect because it does not disrupt the environment. There is no wake, no sudden displacement. The waterline rests just below the eyes, and the body extends backward in a straight, low profile, anchored by a muscular tail that is already coiled with stored force. In this state, the caiman is not passive. It is calibrated, reading vibrations through the water, detecting pressure changes that travel far more efficiently through liquid than through air. Every step taken at the bank sends signals outward, and those signals are interpreted instantly. When the strike comes, it is not the beginning of the event. It is the transition point between observation and control. The head rises with a short, explosive movement, powered by the tail, not by the jaws themselves. The jaws close with precision rather than randomness, targeting whatever part of the body has entered the water's reach. This is often a limb, sometimes the lower torso, occasionally the head or neck if the angle allows it. The bite force is substantial, but it is not the defining feature of what follows. The teeth are not designed to slice or chew. They are conical, built to penetrate and hold, creating a grip that resists withdrawal from multiple directions. Once embedded, they transform the contact point into a fixed anchor. The first second is abrupt, disorienting, but survivable in isolation. It is the next 5 seconds that begin to reshape the situation entirely. The caiman does not release to reposition. It does not test or adjust its grip in a way that gives the prey a chance to recover balance. Instead, it uses the water itself as a tool. By pulling backward and downward, the animal introduces a second force into the interaction: leverage through buoyancy and drag. On land, an animal can brace, distribute weight, and counteract force through friction. In water, those options collapse. The moment the center of mass shifts even partially off stable ground, resistance drops sharply. The caiman does not need to overpower the entire body. It only needs to disrupt its alignment. This is where the wound stops behaving like a simple injury. The jaws are not just inflicting damage, they are establishing a point of control that redirects the entire body's movement. A leg caught at the wrong angle becomes a handle. A bite to the torso compresses not only muscle, but also the mechanical rhythm of breathing. Even without immediate catastrophic damage, the prey is forced into a position where each movement increases instability rather than correcting it. The water amplifies this effect. Every attempt to pull away creates turbulence, which the caiman uses to adjust its own position with minimal effort. It is not reacting in panic. It is operating within a system where the environment multiplies its advantage. Caimans are often described in terms of their bite force, but this simplifies a much more complex interaction. The jaw muscles are indeed powerful, capable of delivering a clamp that is difficult to pry open externally. However, the true effectiveness lies in endurance and consistency. The muscles responsible for closing the jaws are far stronger than those that open them, allowing the caiman to maintain a locked position for extended periods with relatively low energy expenditure. This asymmetry is not accidental. It reflects an evolutionary emphasis on holding rather than striking repeatedly. In a system where prey may struggle violently, consistency outperforms raw force. As the seconds pass, the struggle shifts from resistance to survival. Breathing becomes irregular as the body is pulled lower into the water. Even partial submersion changes the mechanics of respiration, especially when combined with compression from the jaws. The caiman often initiates a rotational movement, commonly referred to as a death roll, but this is not always immediate. When it occurs, it serves to disorient, tear, and further destabilize. The rotation is driven by the tail and the axial muscles of the body, converting stored torque into a rapid spin that the prey cannot match or predict. In water, this movement creates a vortex of displaced liquid, reducing the prey's ability to orient itself while increasing the caiman's control over the interaction. What is often overlooked is how little the caiman needs to adjust once the hold is established. Unlike predators that rely on repeated bites or repositioning, the caiman benefits from minimizing movement. Each adjustment carries risk, as it introduces moments where the grip could weaken. By maintaining a stable clamp and allowing the prey's own movements to create openings, the caiman reduces its exposure while increasing the likelihood of a decisive outcome. This is not passivity. It is a form of mechanical patience where the system is allowed to run its course. From an ecological perspective, this strategy is highly efficient. The Amazon is an environment where energy conservation is critical, especially for ectothermic animals like caimans that rely on external heat sources to regulate their metabolism. By reducing the need for prolonged chases or repeated high-energy attacks, the caiman aligns its hunting method with its physiological constraints. It does not need to outpace or outlast prey in a traditional sense. It needs to control a small window of interaction and extend its influence through environmental leverage. The consequences for prey species are significant. Animals that approach the water must account not only for visibility, but also for positioning and timing. Herd animals often drink in groups, creating a dilution effect where the probability of any one individual being targeted is reduced. Some species adopt rapid drinking behaviors, minimizing the time spent at the edge. Others rely on heightened vigilance, scanning for subtle disturbances that might indicate the presence of a submerged predator. Despite these adaptations, the risk cannot be eliminated. The caiman's advantage lies in its ability to remain undetected until the moment of contact, at which point many defensive strategies become irrelevant. There are also instances where the interaction does not result in immediate death, but leads to prolonged suffering. A non-lethal bite can still impair mobility, introduce infection, and disrupt normal behavior patterns. In an environment where survival depends on constant movement, awareness, and access to resources, Even a minor reduction in capability can have cascading effects. The caiman does not need to consume every prey item it bites. The ecosystem absorbs these outcomes, redistributing energy through scavengers and decomposers. This is not waste. It is part of a broader network where control at one point influences multiple pathways. Observing a caiman in its natural environment reveals a predator that is deeply integrated into its surroundings. It is not an intruder, but a structural component of the river system. Its presence shapes the behavior of other species, influences movement patterns, and contributes to the balance between predator and prey populations. The stillness at the water's edge is not emptiness. It is tension held in place, a quiet accumulation of potential that can resolve in an instant. The fear associated with a caiman encounter is often framed around the bite itself, the moment of impact that draws immediate attention. But this focus misses the more important aspect of the interaction. The bite is only the entry point. What follows is a sustained application of control that transforms a localized injury into a systemic failure. Balance is lost, breathing is compromised, and the environment shifts from neutral ground to an extension of the predator's body. The water, the leverage, the unyielding clamp of the jaws all combine into a mechanism that does not rely on escalation. It relies on continuation. This is why the first second matters less than the next 5. In that initial moment, the body reacts, attempts to pull away, to re-establish control. But as the seconds extend, each movement feeds into a system that is already designed to counter it. The caiman does not need to increase its effort. It needs only to maintain its hold and allow the mechanics of water and muscle to do the rest. The wound ceases to be a singular event and becomes a process, one that unfolds with a cold, predictable logic. Standing at the edge of such a river, it is easy to underestimate what lies just beneath the surface. The water reflects the canopy, the sky, the surrounding vegetation, creating an illusion of calm that feels stable and safe. But within that reflection is a predator that has refined its method over millions of years, reducing the act of hunting to a sequence of controlled interactions. There is no excess, no wasted motion, only the quiet certainty that once the jaws close, the outcome is no longer determined by the initial strike, but by the unbroken continuity of the hold that follows. The river here does not feel still in the same way it did before. It moves, not in obvious current, but in overlapping disturbances, ripples that cross and cancel each other, wakes that appear and vanish without a visible source. Along a narrow channel cut through flooded forest, the water is stained dark with tannins, reflecting a broken canopy of leaning trunks and suspended vines. It is a place shaped by repetition, where fish move predictable routes and prey species time their crossings carefully. But this is not a waiting system like the one governed by a caiman. This is an occupied space. The disturbance is not background noise, it is presence, and it is coordinated. A group of giant otters moves through the channel with a kind of restless precision that resists simple description. At a distance, the first impression is almost misleading. Their movements are fluid, playful even, bodies rising and falling through the surface with soft splashes and rolling arcs. They vocalize frequently, sharp chirps and whistles that carry over the water, maintaining contact with one another as they spread and regroup. It is easy at first to read this as social ease, as if the river here belongs to a system of communication rather than conflict. But that interpretation holds only as long as nothing challenges it. The moment something enters their territory in the wrong way, the tone shifts with almost mechanical speed. Giant otters are not solitary predators. They operate as a unit, and that changes the entire geometry of an encounter. Where a single hunter must commit to a direction and maintain control alone, a group can apply pressure from multiple angles at once. The water amplifies this advantage. It is not just a medium they move through, it is a surface that transmits motion, sound, and displacement. When one otter accelerates, the others register it immediately. When prey attempts to flee, the disturbance spreads outward, mapping its trajectory in real time. There is no need for visual confirmation alone. The river itself becomes a shared sensory field. Their bodies are built for this kind of interaction. Long, muscular, and streamlined, they move with a speed that feels disproportionate to their size. The tail acts as both rudder and propulsion, while the limbs, though small relative to the body, are powerful enough to execute rapid directional changes. The head is compact, with jaws that close not with the crushing force of a reptile, but with a shearing pressure designed to grip and tear. The teeth are sharp and interlocking, adapted for handling slippery prey like fish, but equally capable of anchoring into flesh when the situation demands it. This is not a bite meant to end something instantly. It is a bite meant to stay. When the shift from movement to attack occurs, it does not begin with a dramatic lunge. It begins with alignment. The group tightens, spacing closes, and the otters begin to move in parallel lines that funnel whatever has entered their range. This can be a large fish, another predator, or even a caiman small enough to be challenged. The initial contact is fast, almost casual in appearance, a quick surge forward and a snap of the jaws. But unlike many predators, the otter does not disengage after contact. It commits. The jaws close, and instead of releasing to reposition, the body follows through, maintaining pressure and adjusting position in the same motion. This is where the violence becomes intimate. The otter's bite is often directed toward the head, neck, or upper body of the target, areas where control translates quickly into vulnerability. In water, control of the head is control of orientation. A fish that loses directional stability becomes easier to manipulate. A reptile that cannot align its body loses the ability to counterattack effectively. Even among mammals, disrupting the head and neck region interferes with breathing and balance in ways that cascade through the entire body. The otter uses this knowledge instinctively, not through calculation, but through a behavioral pattern shaped by countless generations of selection. Once the bite is established, the otter does not attempt to overpower the entire body at once. It uses movement to multiply the effect of the hold. By twisting, pulling, and repositioning in short, controlled bursts, it destabilizes the target incrementally. The water again plays a critical role. It reduces friction, allowing the otter to redirect force with minimal resistance while increasing drag on the target, which struggles to maintain orientation. The result is a continuous imbalance where each attempt to resist creates new openings for the otter to exploit. What makes this interaction particularly effective is the involvement of the group. While one otter maintains a bite, others circle, probe, and strike at exposed areas. They do not pile on indiscriminately. There is a rhythm to their engagement, a sequence of pressure and release that prevents the target from stabilizing while avoiding interference with one another. This coordination is not perfect, but it is sufficient to create a layered attack where control is reinforced from multiple directions. The prey is not simply held. It is surrounded by a shifting network of contact points that adapt as the situation evolves. This behavior is most visible in territorial conflicts. Giant otters are highly defensive of their range, particularly when it includes a den site or young. Intruders are not merely chased away. They are confronted, often at close range, with a level of aggression that contrasts sharply with the species' social image. In these encounters, the bite and hold strategy becomes a tool not just for feeding, but for enforcement. An intruding animal that fails to retreat quickly can find itself engaged in a physical struggle where the otters aim to drive it out through sustained pressure rather than a single decisive blow. The anatomy of the otter supports this approach in subtle ways. Their dense fur, among the thickest in the animal kingdom, provides insulation in water, but also offers a degree of protection against superficial bites and abrasions. Their skin is relatively loose over the body, allowing some movement within the fur layer, which can reduce the effectiveness of an opponent's grip. These features do not make them invulnerable, but they contribute to a resilience that allows them to remain engaged at close range longer than many other mammals would tolerate. Breathing, as in the previous chapter, becomes a critical factor, but it is manipulated differently here. Instead of relying on submersion and passive drowning, the otter uses repeated interference at the surface. By controlling the head and forcing erratic movement, it disrupts the timing and rhythm of breaths. Each attempt to surface cleanly is interrupted, either by direct contact or by the instability created by the group's movements. Over time, this creates a cumulative effect where oxygen intake becomes inconsistent, increasing stress and reducing the target's capacity to respond effectively. The intelligence of the otter is often highlighted in terms of tool use and social learning, but in this context, it manifests as adaptability within the fight. They adjust their approach based on the resistance they encounter. A struggling fish may be handled differently than a reptile that attempts to bite back. A rival otter from another group triggers a different pattern of engagement altogether, with more emphasis on display, vocalization, and coordinated pressure rather than immediate lethal force. This flexibility does not reduce the violence of the interaction. It refines it, ensuring that effort is directed where it is most effective. From an ecological standpoint, giant otters occupy a role that extends beyond simple predation. As apex or near-apex predators in many of the waterways they inhabit, they influence the distribution and behavior of fish populations, which in turn affects plant communities and nutrient cycles. Their presence can alter the activity patterns of other predators, including caimans, creating zones of dominance that shift over time. This dynamic interaction between species adds a layer of complexity to the river system, where control is not absolute, but negotiated through repeated encounters. There is also a visible aftermath to their hunting that differs from the cleaner kills often imagined in terrestrial environments. Feeding can be messy, with remains scattered along the banks or floating briefly before being reclaimed by the river. Scavengers quickly move in, from birds to smaller fish, redistributing the energy through the ecosystem. The otters themselves may leave and return, their movements dictated by both hunger and territorial patrol. Nothing here is isolated. Each event feeds into a broader network of interactions that sustain the system as a whole. What makes the giant otter such an effective subject for this chapter is not just its capacity for aggression, but the way that aggression is delivered. It is not distant or detached. It is close, sustained, and physical in a way that feels immediate. There is no reliance on venom, no delayed effect that unfolds out of sight. The impact is visible in the moment of contact and in the seconds that follow, as control is established and maintained through a combination of bite, movement, and coordination. The river, once again, becomes part of the mechanism. It carries the signals, shapes the movement, and amplifies the effects of each action. But unlike the cold stillness that defines the caiman's domain, this is a space of active pressure, where intelligence and cooperation replace ambush as the dominant strategy. The danger does not wait beneath the surface, it moves through it, reshaping the environment with each coordinated pass. In this context, the idea of pain that does not end with the first hit takes on a different form. It is not a matter of a single overwhelming force applied and sustained. It is a series of controlled interactions, each one reinforcing the last, building toward a point where resistance becomes increasingly difficult to maintain. The bite is the entry, but the hold is shared, transferred, and reapplied as needed. Control is not fixed in one place. It moves with the group, adapting to the flow of the encounter. Standing at the edge of such a channel, the signs are there for those who know how to read them. The overlapping ripples, the sudden bursts of movement, the sharp vocalizations that cut through the humid air. These are not random disturbances. They are the surface expression of a coordinated system operating just below and within the waterline. To underestimate it is to misunderstand the nature of the threat. The giant otter does not rely on surprise alone. It relies on presence, persistence, and the willingness to remain in contact until the outcome is no longer in question. The forest does not end at the ground. It lifts itself upward in layers, each one creating a different set of rules for movement, visibility, and survival. In the lower canopy, where branches thicken and cross each other at reachable heights, the air is heavier, held in place by leaves that intercept both sunlight and wind. Moisture clings here, condensing on bark and collecting in shallow depressions. The light is fractured into narrow beams that illuminate sections of space while leaving others in deep, consistent shadow. It is not an empty vertical zone. It is a structured environment where paths exist, but only for those built to use them. Along one of these low branches, partially obscured by overlapping leaves, a tree boa has already taken position. Its body is not stretched out in full length, nor is it coiled tightly in a defensive posture. Instead, it forms a loose series of loops anchored against the branch, distributing its weight in a way that minimizes strain while maintaining readiness. The head is placed forward, resting lightly along the wood or suspended just above it, aligned with a predictable root below. This alignment is not random. It reflects repeated use of this space by small mammals, birds, or lizards that move through the understory with regularity. The tree boa's presence is not announced through motion. It is defined by stillness that blends with structure. Its coloration, often a mix of muted browns, greens, and subtle patterning, mirrors the textures of bark and foliage. Even at close range, it is difficult to distinguish the animal from its surroundings unless one is specifically searching for it. This camouflage is not merely visual. It reduces the likelihood of triggering alarm responses in prey species that rely on pattern recognition to detect threats. In this environment, where every branch and shadow could conceal something, the absence of obvious movement becomes a form of concealment. Unlike ground-based predators that rely heavily on scent trails or large-scale movement, the tree boa operates within a compressed field of opportunity. Its strike zone is limited by the reach of its body and the geometry of the branch. This limitation does not weaken its strategy. It refines it. The snake does not need to pursue prey across distance. It needs to predict where that prey will pass within a narrow corridor and position itself accordingly. This is an exercise in spatial awareness rather than speed, in understanding patterns rather than reacting to them. When the moment arrives, it is triggered by proximity rather than prolonged observation. A small mammal moves along the branch, pausing intermittently to test the surface, to sniff, to listen. Its attention is divided among multiple stimuli: sound, scent, balance, and this division creates gaps. The tree boa does not wait for a perfect still target. It waits for alignment. The head shifts slightly, a minimal adjustment that brings the jaws into position. Then the strike occurs. The movement is direct and efficient. The head extends forward, jaws opening just enough to accommodate the target area, and the teeth make contact. These teeth are not designed for slicing. They are recurved, angled backward in a way that resists withdrawal. When they penetrate, they do so with a purpose: to hold. This is the anchor bite, the point at which the interaction transitions from potential to control. There is no testing phase, no tentative contact. The first engagement is already committed. At this instant, the nature of the encounter changes fundamentally. The bite is not an isolated event. It is the first step in a sequence that unfolds almost immediately. The body of the snake begins to move, not in a delayed reaction, but in a continuation of the same action. The loops that were previously arranged along the branch shift, tightening and redirecting as they begin to wrap around the prey. This wrapping is not random. It follows the contours of the prey's body, seeking points where pressure can be applied most effectively. The speed of this transition is critical. In many cases, the prey does not have a second opportunity to escape once the initial bite has landed. The teeth prevent backward movement, the body begins to encircle, and the available space for resistance narrows rapidly. The branch itself becomes part of the mechanism. It provides a fixed structure against which the snake can press, increasing the effectiveness of its coils without requiring excessive muscular effort. The prey is not only being held by the snake, it is being compressed between the snake and the environment. Constriction in this context is often misunderstood as a simple crushing force. In reality, it is a dynamic process that interferes with multiple physiological systems simultaneously. As the coils tighten, they apply pressure that restricts blood flow, particularly venous return to the heart. This leads to a rapid drop in blood pressure and a disruption of circulation that can cause loss of consciousness within a relatively short period. At the same time, the expansion of the chest during breathing is limited, adding a secondary layer of stress. The prey does not experience a single overwhelming force. It experiences a cascade of failures that build on each other. The anchor bite remains in place throughout this process. The snake does not release and reposition its jaws unless necessary. The teeth continue to hold, ensuring that the head remains aligned with the body's coils. This alignment is important. It maintains the integrity of the constriction, preventing the prey from twisting free or finding a gap in the loops. The bite is not delivering venom. It is maintaining a point of control that integrates with the rest of the body's actions. From a behavioral perspective, this strategy reflects an economy of motion that is highly suited to the arboreal environment. In the canopy, energy expenditure must be balanced against stability. Large, uncontrolled movements increase the risk of losing position or falling. By relying on a precise initial strike, followed by controlled wrapping, the tree boa minimizes unnecessary motion while maximizing effectiveness. The branch supports the body, the coils do the work, and the snake remains anchored throughout the interaction. Thermoregulation also plays a role in how and when these interactions occur. As ectotherms, tree boas depend on external heat sources to regulate their body temperature. The lower canopy offers a range of microclimates, with sunlit patches providing warmth and shaded areas offering cooler conditions. The snake may position itself not only based on prey movement, but also on thermal gradients that allow it to maintain optimal muscle function. A body that is too cool responds more slowly. One that is properly warmed can execute the precise, rapid movements required for an effective strike. The vertical environment introduces additional challenges for prey species. Movement along branches requires constant adjustments in balance, grip, and orientation. These adjustments consume attention and limit the ability to respond instantly to threats. A misstep can result in a fall, which in itself carries risk. This divided focus creates opportunities for predators like the tree boa, which remain stable and undistracted. The snake does not need to manage multiple tasks simultaneously. It waits, aligned with the branch, until the moment of contact. There are also interactions that extend beyond simple predation. Tree boas may compete with other arboreal predators, including birds of prey and mammals, for access to similar resources. Their presence influences the behavior of these species, altering movement patterns and feeding times. In some cases, smaller animals may avoid certain branches or roots altogether if they detect signs of a snake's presence, even if the snake itself is not visible. This creates a shifting map of risk within the canopy, where safe pathways are temporary and contingent. What distinguishes the tree boa in this sequence is the immediacy with which the bite transforms into a full-body trap. There is no prolonged chase, no need for repeated attempts. The precision of the initial contact sets the entire process in motion. Once the teeth have engaged, the outcome is increasingly dictated by the mechanics of the snake's body and the constraints of the environment. The prey is drawn into a system where each movement is countered. Each attempt to escape is absorbed into the tightening structure of the coils. For an observer, this interaction reveals a different dimension of control. It is not applied from a distance or through overwhelming force alone. It is applied through integration, where the bite, the body, and the environment function as a single unit. The branch is not just a platform, it is part of the trap. The snake does not need to overpower the prey in open space. It uses the structure around it to multiply its effectiveness. The psychological impact of this kind of encounter is distinct as well. The attack does not end with the bite. It begins there. The presence of the snake is not fleeting. It becomes an enclosing force, one that reduces space, limits movement, and maintains pressure until the process is complete. There is no clean separation between strike and resolution. They are part of the same continuous action. In the layered architecture of the Amazon, this strategy is both efficient and inevitable. The canopy is not simply a refuge from ground-based threats. It is a domain with its own predators, its own forms of control, and its own consequences for those that move through it. The tree boa embodies this reality with a method that turns a single point of contact into a comprehensive hold, demonstrating that in this environment, the difference between a momentary encounter and a decisive one is measured not by the number of strikes, but by what the first one becomes. The forest floor compresses everything into a tighter scale. Light struggles to reach it, filtered through multiple layers of canopy, vines, and suspended moisture, until what remains is diffuse and directional, catching only the upper edges of leaves and the glossy surfaces of damp wood. Beneath that filtered light, the ground is not open space, but a continuous surface of structure, leaf litter in varying stages of decay, roots pushing upward through soft soil, fungal growths feeding on what the forest has already discarded. Movement here is rarely obvious. It happens in fragments, a twitch beneath a curled leaf, a ripple in a cluster of debris, a slight shift in texture where something has repositioned itself without breaking the surface. This is where a tarantula operates, not as an active pursuer of prey across distance, but as a presence embedded within the substrate. Its body is heavy for its size, low to the ground, with a mass that feels deliberate rather than agile. Each leg is placed with care, distributing weight across multiple contact points, minimizing vibration while maximizing stability. The spider does not rely on sight in the way many vertebrates do. Its world is defined by touch, by the detection of minute disturbances transmitted through the ground and through the fine sensory hairs that cover its legs and body. Every step taken nearby, every wing beat that lands too heavily, becomes information. The burrow, when present, is not simply a hiding place. It is an extension of the spider's sensory field. Lined with silk, it acts as a resonant chamber, amplifying vibrations that travel through the surrounding material. The tarantula positions itself at the threshold, or just within it. Front legs extended, body angled to respond. From this position, it does not need to see its prey approach. It feels it. The difference between wind, falling debris, and a living organism is not subtle at this level. Each produces a distinct pattern, and the spider's nervous system is tuned to recognize those patterns with precision. When the strike occurs, it is sudden, but it is not uncontrolled. The tarantula does not leap blindly. It commits in a short, direct surge, covering a minimal distance with maximum accuracy. The front legs make contact first, acting almost like grappling points, bracing against the surface of the prey. This initial contact is critical. It stabilizes the interaction, preventing the prey from simply bouncing away or deflecting the attack through momentum. The spider's body follows immediately, bringing the fangs into position. The fangs themselves are not small, delicate instruments. In larger species, they are robust, curved structures capable of penetrating the exoskeleton of insects and even the skin of small vertebrates. They move downward in a controlled motion, driven by powerful muscles that allow the spider to deliver a precise insertion rather than a slashing action. This is not a bite that grazes or tests. It is a placement that commits to depth. Once the fangs enter, they anchor the spider to the prey in a way that transforms the interaction from a momentary strike into a sustained contact. What follows is not experienced as a single event. The prey does not register a clean, isolated puncture and then separate. Instead, it encounters something that has attached itself, that remains in place, that continues to apply pressure and deliver venom while maintaining physical contact. The spider's legs tighten around the prey, adjusting constantly to counter movement. The body remains low, weight distributed to prevent dislodgement. Even small movements by the prey are met with immediate corrections, the spider shifting its center of gravity to maintain its hold. The venom, in this context, is not designed to act instantaneously. In many tarantula species, it is relatively mild compared to that of more specialized venomous spiders. Its role is to subdue, to begin the process of immobilization, rather than to cause rapid systemic failure. This is where the experience becomes prolonged. The prey remains aware, continues to struggle, but finds its movements increasingly constrained, not just by the physical grip of the spider, but by the gradual onset of neuromuscular disruption. It is not a dramatic shutdown. It is a steady interference, a reduction in coordination that makes effective resistance more difficult with each passing second. For small vertebrates, the situation is even more complex. The skin is penetrated, the venom introduced, and the spider maintains its hold, sometimes adjusting its position to ensure continued access to vulnerable tissue. The sensation is not just localized. It spreads, not necessarily as intense pain, but as a persistent irritation combined with the pressure of the spider's body and the constant presence of the fangs. The wound does not have time to register as something that has ended. It remains active, redefined continuously by the ongoing contact. The tarantula's method here reflects an evolutionary pathway that prioritizes control over speed. In an environment where prey can be fast and unpredictable, a strategy that relies on a single decisive strike carries risk. By anchoring itself and maintaining contact, the spider reduces that risk. It does not need to outpace its prey after the initial engagement. It needs to outlast its resistance. This is a subtle but important distinction, one that shapes the entire interaction. There is another layer to this encounter that operates before and after the bite itself. Many New World tarantulas possess urticating hairs, specialized structures on the abdomen that can be released when the spider feels threatened. These hairs are not delivered through the fangs. They are deployed by the spider, rubbing its hind legs against its abdomen, flicking the hairs into the air toward the perceived threat. Each hair is barbed, designed to embed in skin, eyes, or mucous membranes, causing irritation that can persist long after the spider has retreated. In a defensive context, this mechanism can precede the bite, creating a zone of discomfort that discourages further contact. In other cases, it follows an encounter, leaving behind a secondary problem that continues even after the primary interaction has ended. The irritation caused by these hairs is not immediately incapacitating, but it is persistent. It triggers inflammatory responses, itching, and, in sensitive areas like the eyes, significant distress. The body reacts to them as foreign intrusions, and their removal is not always straightforward. This dual system, mechanical attachment through the fangs and residual irritation through urticating hairs, extends the impact of the tarantula's presence beyond the moment of contact. It ensures that even brief encounters are not easily dismissed. The forest floor, already dense with stimuli, becomes a place where interactions can leave traces that linger, affecting behavior and perception long after the spider itself is no longer visible. From a broader ecological perspective, tarantulas occupy a niche that connects multiple layers of the food web. They prey on insects, small vertebrates, and occasionally other arachnids, while also serving as prey for larger animals, including birds, mammals, and even parasitic wasps. This position requires a balance between offense and defense, between the ability to subdue prey and the need to avoid becoming prey themselves. The reliance on camouflage, low movement, and sudden engagement reflects this balance. It allows the spider to operate effectively without drawing unnecessary attention. Thermoregulation plays a role here as well. As ectothermic animals, tarantulas depend on external temperatures to regulate their metabolic processes. The forest floor provides a relatively stable microclimate, buffered from the extremes of direct sunlight and open air. By remaining within this layer, often near or within burrows, the spider maintains conditions that support its activity while reducing exposure to predators and environmental stress. This stability contributes to the patience seen in its hunting strategy. There is no need for constant movement when the environment supports prolonged stillness. What distinguishes this chapter from those that came before is not the scale of the predator, but the scale of the experience. The caiman operates at a distance defined by water and leverage, the giant otter within a dynamic field of group coordination. The tarantula reduces the interaction to immediate proximity. There is no separation between predator and prey once contact is made. The body becomes the site of the encounter, and the distinction between outside and inside begins to blur as the fangs penetrate and the venom is introduced. For an observer, this creates a different kind of awareness. It is no longer about reading the surface of a river or the movement of a group. It is about recognizing the potential for contact in places that appear static and inert. The leaf litter, the roots, the dark openings in the soil. These are not empty spaces. They are inhabited, structured by organisms that have adapted to operate within them with precision. The discomfort associated with a tarantula encounter is not solely physical. It is psychological, rooted in the perception of something attaching itself, of a boundary being crossed and then maintained. The bite does not resolve quickly. The presence lingers, both in the continued contact during the attack and in the residual effects afterward. Even when the spider releases and retreats, the interaction continues through the body's response to the wound and to the embedded hairs. In this way, the tarantula reinforces the central idea of the sequence. The initial strike is only the beginning. What defines the encounter is what follows: the sustained contact, the gradual progression of effects, and the way the body is drawn into a process that does not end at the moment of impact. The forest floor, quiet and layered, becomes a place where even the smallest interactions can unfold into something extended and difficult to resolve, not through overwhelming force, but through persistence at the closest possible range. The water here does not feel stable, even when it looks calm. In a shallow backwater cut off from the main river channel, the surface lies flat beneath a ceiling of overhanging branches, broken only by the occasional drip of condensation falling from leaves. It appears quiet in the way many Amazon waters do, but that quiet is deceptive. Beneath it, the system is already in motion, not in large visible currents, but in layered signals, pressure changes, chemical traces, and micro-disturbances that move through the water faster than anything can be seen. This is the environment where piranha operate, and it is not built around spectacle. It is built around reaction. A group of piranha does not behave like a coordinated pack in the mammalian sense. There is no fixed formation, no leader directing movement. Instead, it functions as a responsive network, where each individual reacts to local cues and those reactions propagate through the group. The result is a form of collective behavior that appears sudden and chaotic from the outside, but is rooted in consistent biological triggers. These fish are constantly sampling their environment, using a combination of vision, lateral line sensitivity, and chemical detection to interpret what is happening around them. They are not waiting for a dramatic event. They are responding to gradients, subtle increases in movement, shifts in water chemistry, and the irregular patterns that indicate vulnerability. The first bite, when it happens, is rarely dramatic. It is a quick, precise cut delivered by a mouth designed for efficiency rather than force. The teeth of a piranha are triangular, razor-sharp, and interlocking, forming a cutting edge that functions more like a pair of shears than a crushing jaw. When the jaws close, they do not puncture deeply in a single thrust. They slice, removing a small piece of tissue with remarkable precision. This is not a wound that incapacitates on its own. It is a wound that introduces instability into the system. What follows is where the logic changes. The initial injury creates new signals, trace amounts of blood, altered movement patterns, and the erratic behavior of a body reacting to sudden pain. These signals do not remain localized. They disperse through the water, carried outward in expanding gradients. Each nearby piranha encounters a slightly different version of this information, but the effect is cumulative. More individuals begin to orient toward the source, not because they are consciously coordinating, but because the environment is guiding them toward the same point. The second contact does not wait for recovery. It arrives while the first wound is still fresh, before the body has had any chance to stabilize. Another quick bite, another small removal of tissue, another burst of chemical and mechanical disturbance. The pattern repeats, accelerating not because any single fish becomes more aggressive, but because the number of interactions increases. The wounded animal becomes a focal point in a rapidly intensifying feedback loop. In this environment, time compresses. The difference between one bite and multiple bites is not measured in minutes, but in fractions of seconds. Each new contact interrupts the body's attempt to respond to the previous one. Pain is not experienced as a sequence of isolated events. It becomes continuous, layered, and escalating. The nervous system cannot reset between stimuli. Instead, it accumulates input, creating a state where reaction becomes less effective with each passing moment. Water amplifies this effect in ways that are not immediately obvious. Unlike air, it carries both movement and chemical signals efficiently, allowing information about the wound to spread quickly. At the same time, it reduces the ability of the wounded animal to generate stable resistance. Movements that might be effective on land, rapid changes in direction, attempts to shake off an attacker, become less precise in water, where drag and buoyancy alter the mechanics of motion. Each attempt to escape creates more disturbance, which in turn attracts further attention. The piranha do not need to maintain a physical hold to create this effect. They do not anchor themselves to the prey or attempt to subdue it through sustained contact. Instead, they rely on repetition. Each bite is brief, but the intervals between bites shrink as more individuals become involved. The wound is reopened, extended, and multiplied before any healing or stabilization can occur. The body is forced into a state where it is constantly reacting, never recovering. This is where the common myth of a sudden, explosive feeding frenzy obscures the more precise reality. In most cases, piranha do not attack indiscriminately or without cause. They are cautious, often hesitant, and many species are primarily scavengers or opportunistic feeders. What changes their behavior is not a switch from calm to chaos, but the presence of a trigger that aligns their responses. A struggling animal, a confined space, a drop in water level that concentrates both predators and prey. These conditions create the context in which repeated biting becomes likely. Seasonal changes play a significant role in this dynamic. During the dry season, when water levels fall and habitats shrink, fish are forced into smaller volumes of water. This increases encounter rates and intensifies competition. Under these conditions, the threshold for initiating a bite may be lower, and the likelihood of multiple individuals responding to the same stimulus increases. The environment itself becomes a pressure system, narrowing the margin for error for any animal that enters it. From a physiological perspective, the piranha's strategy is highly efficient. By removing small amounts of tissue rather than attempting to subdue large prey outright, they reduce the risk associated with each individual attack. A single fish does not need to commit to a prolonged struggle. It takes what it can and withdraws, allowing others to do the same. This distributes risk across the group while maintaining a steady flow of energy intake. It also means that even larger animals can be affected if they are unable to escape quickly enough, not because any one fish is capable of overpowering them, but because the cumulative effect of repeated bites becomes significant. There is also a subtlety in how piranha interpret movement that adds another layer to this interaction. Their lateral line system, which detects changes in water pressure, is particularly sensitive to irregular, high-frequency disturbances. the kind produced by struggling or injured prey. Smooth, consistent movement is less likely to trigger a strong response. This creates a paradox for the wounded animal. The more it struggles, the more it signals its vulnerability. The less it moves, the less it can actively escape. The body is caught between two ineffective options, each with its own cost. In some cases, the interaction does not escalate to a large group event. A single or a few piranha may deliver bites and then disengage, leaving the wounded animal to recover or succumb to other factors. But when the conditions align, when the signals propagate effectively and the density of fish is high, the process accelerates beyond the control of any single participant. It becomes a system-level response, where the behavior of the group emerges from the accumulation of individual actions. The aftermath of such an encounter is rarely clean. The water may remain disturbed for a time, carrying residual signals that gradually dissipate. Other species may move in, attracted by the same cues, contributing to the redistribution of energy within the ecosystem. The piranha themselves disperse, returning to a state of relative calm once the stimulus fades. There is no lasting frenzy, no sustained aggression beyond the conditions that triggered it. The system resets, waiting for the next alignment of signals. What makes this chapter distinct is the way it reframes the idea of a wound. In the previous encounters, control was maintained through continuous physical contact. A bite that holds, a body that wraps, a predator that remains attached. Here, control is exerted through interruption. The wound is not allowed to stabilize. Each new bite prevents the previous one from becoming a closed event. The body is kept in a state of ongoing response, where healing, even in its earliest stages, is repeatedly disrupted. This creates a different kind of fear, one that is less about being held and more about being unable to recover. The initial injury is not the decisive moment. It is the opening of a process that can escalate rapidly if the conditions allow. The water becomes a medium not just for movement, but for amplification, carrying the consequences of that first bite outward and drawing them back in with increasing intensity. Standing at the edge of such a backwater, the surface reveals little of this complexity. It reflects the canopy, the shifting light, the occasional movement of insects or falling debris. But beneath that reflection is a system that responds quickly to disruption, one that does not rely on a single overpowering force, but on the accumulation of many small, precise actions. In this system, the difference between a minor injury and a critical event is not defined by the size of the first bite, but by what follows, by how quickly the body is forced into a cycle of repeated contact from which it cannot easily escape. In this way, the piranha extend the central idea into a new form. The attack does not need to hold in a physical sense to continue causing harm. It persists through repetition, through the rapid succession of bites that transform a localized wound into a broader, escalating problem. The body is not captured by a single predator. It is caught in a pattern, one that accelerates as long as the conditions remain aligned, proving that control in the Amazon can be exerted not only through grip and pressure, but through the relentless reopening of the same vulnerability before it has any chance to close. The forest tightens again, but not downward into soil or upward into branches. It narrows into pathways, thin corridors pressed between roots, trunks, and low vegetation where movement becomes deliberate and constrained. In these spaces, visibility is short, angles are limited, and every step has to be placed with care. This is where the illusion of safety often forms, because nothing large seems able to move through without announcing itself. But this assumption only holds if size equals noise, and in the Amazon, that is not always true. An ocelot moves through this compressed world without breaking it. Its body is built for threading through structure rather than pushing against it, shoulders rolling smoothly beneath a coat patterned in rosettes and stripes that fracture its outline into pieces of shadow and light. The markings are not decoration, they are disruption, a visual strategy that dissolves the animal's shape against the layered textures of the forest floor and understory. Even at close range, the eye struggles to resolve the boundaries of the body, especially when it is still. And stillness here is not absence of action, it is preparation. Unlike larger cats that can rely on mass and momentum to correct imperfect strikes, the ocelot operates within narrower margins. Its prey base, small mammals, birds, reptiles, does not allow for prolonged chases or repeated attempts. Each engagement carries a cost, and failure means not just a missed meal, but wasted energy in an environment where efficiency is survival. This constraint has shaped a predator that prioritizes precision over power, placement over force, and timing over spectacle. The forest at this level is dense with signals. Leaf litter holds the memory of recent movement. Stems bend and recover slowly, and the air carries faint chemical traces that linger just long enough to be useful. The ocelot reads these cues continuously, not as isolated pieces of information, but as a layered narrative of what has passed through and how recently. Its whiskers extend this sensitivity into the immediate space around its head, detecting changes in air movement and proximity to objects. The ears rotate independently, triangulating sound with a level of accuracy that reduces uncertainty before the body ever commits to motion. When the approach begins, it is not a direct line. The ocelot does not move straight toward its target unless the terrain forces it. Instead, it uses the structure of the environment to mask its advance, slipping behind trunks, pausing within shadows, adjusting its path to maintain cover. Each step is placed with a precision that minimizes noise, the padded paws absorbing impact and preventing the dry leaves from announcing its presence. The body remains low, but not pressed flat. It is coiled in a way that preserves the ability to accelerate instantly without telegraphing the movement. The moment of contact is brief, but it is not chaotic. The ocelot commits fully, launching from a position that has already been calculated for distance, angle, and outcome. The forelimbs extend first, not to strike blindly, but to establish control. They hook into the prey's body, drawing it inward while the jaws move toward a specific target zone. This is where the distinction between a large and a small cat becomes clear. The ocelot does not bite wherever it can reach. It aims. The neck region is the objective, but not in a generalized sense. It is a narrow band where multiple vulnerabilities overlap: major blood vessels, the airway, and the cervical vertebrae that support the head. The exact placement depends on the orientation of the prey at the moment of impact. A bite slightly higher may compress the trachea, interfering with breathing. A bite slightly lower may engage the carotid arteries, affecting blood flow to the brain. In some cases, the teeth may find purchase between vertebrae, allowing the cat to apply pressure that disrupts the structural integrity of the neck. These are not separate strategies chosen consciously. They are outcomes of a targeting system refined through repetition and selection. Once the bite lands, the interaction shifts immediately from strike to hold. The jaws close with a force sufficient to penetrate and maintain grip, but it is not the force alone that matters. It is the consistency. The ocelot does not release to adjust unless the initial placement fails. It holds, maintaining pressure while the rest of the body engages. The forelimbs tighten, pulling the prey closer, while the hind limbs brace against the ground, providing leverage. The tail may extend or counterbalance, stabilizing the body as it resists any movement that could dislodge it. This is where the encounter becomes controlled in a way that mirrors, but does not replicate, the previous predators. There is no water to amplify force, no coils to constrict, no repeated bites to escalate damage. Instead, there is a sustained application of pressure at a critical point. The prey is not overwhelmed by multiple simultaneous failures. It is guided into one that becomes decisive. The airway narrows, the flow of blood is altered, and the nervous system begins to respond to a combination of oxygen deprivation and mechanical stress. The ocelot's size demands this efficiency. It cannot afford to wrestle indefinitely with prey that may be capable of injuring it. Rodents can bite, birds can claw, reptiles can thrash unpredictably. Each second spent in uncontrolled struggle increases risk. By targeting the neck and maintaining a firm hold, the ocelot reduces the duration of the encounter and limits the opportunity for counterattack. The goal is not to overpower in a broad sense, but to neutralize quickly and with minimal exposure. There is also a refinement in how the ocelot adjusts during the hold. If the initial bite does not achieve the desired effect, the cat may shift slightly, repositioning its jaws without fully releasing. This is done with care, maintaining contact through the forelimbs while the head adjusts. The transition is smooth, avoiding the kind of separation that would allow the prey to escape. It is a continuation rather than a reset, preserving control throughout the adjustment. Breathing once again becomes central, but in a more focused way than in previous encounters. The compression of the airway does not need to be absolute to be effective. Even partial obstruction, combined with the stress of the situation, can disrupt the rhythm of respiration enough to create rapid fatigue. The prey's attempts to inhale become less effective, each breath drawing less air than needed, while the exertion of struggling increases oxygen demand. This imbalance accelerates the decline, not through a single overwhelming event, but through a mismatch between need and supply. From an ecological perspective, the ocelot occupies a role that is both specialized and flexible. It is a mesopredator, operating below the largest cats but above a wide range of smaller prey species. This position requires adaptability, as it must avoid competition with larger predators while exploiting opportunities that others may overlook. Its activity patterns often shift toward nocturnal or crepuscular periods, reducing direct encounters with dominant species while aligning with the activity of its preferred prey. This temporal adjustment is as important as its physical adaptations, allowing it to operate within a crowded ecosystem without constant conflict. The forest itself shapes these interactions in subtle ways. Dense vegetation limits visibility, forcing predators and prey into closer proximity before detection occurs. This favors ambush strategies and precise targeting over long-distance pursuits. The uneven terrain, with its roots, depressions, and obstacles, disrupts continuous movement, creating moments where balance is compromised. The ocelot uses these moments, aligning its attack with points where the prey is already slightly disadvantaged. There are also instances where the ocelot's method extends beyond hunting into territorial behavior. Encounters with other predators or conspecifics can involve similar targeting, though often with less lethal intent. The neck remains a focal point, as control here translates into dominance. These interactions are usually brief, resolved through displays and limited contact, but they reveal the same underlying principle: control through precise engagement rather than prolonged conflict. What makes the ocelot a fitting conclusion is the clarity of its method. It strips the concept down to its essential elements: placement, hold, and duration. There is no reliance on environmental amplification or group dynamics. The effectiveness of the attack rests entirely on the accuracy of the initial contact and the ability to maintain it long enough for the body's own systems to fail. It is a reminder that complexity in the Amazon does not always mean complication. Sometimes it means refinement, the reduction of a process to its most efficient form. The psychological impact of this kind of predation is different as well. There is no build-up of escalating chaos, no prolonged struggle that spreads outward. The event is contained, focused on a single point where the predator and prey are joined. The outcome is determined within that narrow space, shaped by the precision of the bite and the steadiness of the hold. It is not less violent than the other encounters, it is more exact. In the broader context of the forest, this precision contributes to balance. By targeting specific individuals, often those that are slightly slower, less aware, or momentarily compromised, the ocelot influences the composition of prey populations without causing widespread disruption. Its impact is selective, maintaining pressure without overwhelming the system. This selective pressure drives adaptation, reinforcing traits that improve detection, speed, and awareness in prey species over time. As the interaction concludes, the forest absorbs the event with the same quiet continuity that preceded it. There is no lingering disturbance beyond the immediate area, no extended signal that draws in other predators. The ocelot may move off with its catch, disappearing back into the structure that concealed it before. The space resets, the pathways reopen, and the layered signals begin to rebuild. What remains is the understanding that in this environment, effectiveness is not measured by size or spectacle. It is measured by the ability to convert a single moment of contact into a sustained advantage. The ocelot embodies this principle with a method that is both restrained and decisive, demonstrating that the most reliable way to keep the damage going is not to strike repeatedly or to overpower completely, but to know exactly where to place the first bite and how to hold it until the body has no path left to recover.